I want you to imagine a victory that secretly feels like a curse. Endgame gave us cheers, tears, and closure, but hidden inside those emotional highs is a shadow most fans never noticed. I noticed it when I rewatched the time travel scene slowly, frame by frame, not as a fan, but as a detective. 2 moments looked heroic, hopeful, and necessary. Yet those same moments quietly rewrite the future into something far darker. This theory is about how saving the universe accidentally created its greatest tyrant. Not Thanos. Someone worse. Someone smarter. Someone born from our favorite hero's choices. Today I break down how Captain America, the symbol of morality, unknowingly becomes the origin point of Dr. Doom. And before you think this is just another wild multiverse idea, stay with me. Because every step connects directly to what the MCU already showed us. Nothing here breaks the rules. Everything hides inside them. By the end, Endgame won't feel like an ending anymore. It will feel like the first chapter of a catastrophe we are still walking toward. And the scariest part is this. Steve Roggers truly believed he was doing the right thing. That belief is exactly what makes this story so dangerous. Especially when time itself is the weapon nobody knows they are holding. And that is where this story truly begins, long before anyone realized the damage was permanent. Pay attention now, because every second from here forward matters, more than any battle ever did before. The core of this theory rests on 2 time travel decisions in Endgame that appear small, almost harmless, but ripple outward like cracks in glass. I think Marvel intentionally framed them as hopeful, so we would never question them. One happens in 19 during a desperate detour to retrieve the Tesseract. The other happens at the very end, when Steve chooses love over logic. On the surface, both choices save lives. Underneath, they alter history's balance. I am not saying Steve turned evil. I am saying his presence carried consequences no one calculated. Time travel in the MCU is not just movement. It is contamination. Every future object, memory, and energy signature carries weight. When Steve moves through time, he drags the future behind him like a shadow. That shadow touches people we never saw on screen. Scientists, politicians, forgotten nations. One of those forgotten figures is a brilliant European mind watching American heroes bend reality itself. This is where Victor Von Doom enters the story, not as a villain, but as a witness, a child, or a young scientist standing near power he was never meant to see. Part 1 of this breakdown focuses on that first mistake, because it plants the seed. Part 2 is where that seed grows into something monstrous. And to understand why, we have to rewind deeper than the movie ever dared. Back to a year filled with secrets, silence, and experiments history tried to bury. This is where everything quietly breaks, apart forever. When Tony and Steve lose the Tesseract in 2012, the movie treats it like a comedic setback. Loki escapes, chaos erupts, and our heroes improvise. I used to laugh at that moment. Now it feels ominous. Because that single slip forces them into 1970, a year the MCU barely explores. A time before Iron Man, before Captain America was a legend, before the world believed in gods. Tony sees his father. Steve sees Peggy through glass. But the camera never shows us what the timeline sees when Steve Roggers walks into a secret military facility carrying future energy in his blood. This is not just a man walking into the past. This is a living anomaly entering a controlled experiment zone. In 1970, S.H.I.E.L.D. is young, paranoid, and obsessed with cosmic artifacts. The Tesseract is not just storage. It is study. It is obsession. Every scientist near it is absorbing data, radiation, and impossible equations. And now, suddenly, Captain America is standing there. A super soldier enhanced by an earlier version of experimental science, holding knowledge of wars, aliens, and timelines that have not happened yet. The movie shows us emotion. It hides the science. That hidden science is where this theory starts to breathe. Because science never forgets what it touches, and time never forgives what interrupts it. The consequences begin immediately, even if the film refuses to show them. And someone nearby is watching history change in real time. That watcher matters more than we realize, much later. What the movie never explains is what kind of research was actually happening around the Tesseract in 1970. This is where I start connecting dots Marvel left scattered. S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't alone. They were collaborating with international minds, pulling talent from Europe under secrecy agreements. The Cold War demanded it. Cosmic energy was the new arms race. Time itself was being measured, distorted, and recorded. Somewhere inside those sterile labs stands a young Victor Von Doom, or perhaps his father, depending on the timeline variant Marvel chooses. Brilliant, overlooked, European. He is not evil yet. He is curious, hungry, and painfully aware that American power decides who gets credit and who gets forgotten. When Steve arrives, everything changes. Super Soldier Serum is not just physical enhancement. It is temporal proof. Proof that human evolution can be forced forward. Add Tesseract radiation and you have a living equation standing in front of Victor. I believe this is the moment Victor realizes power is not divine. It is engineered, controlled, stolen. The Americans see weapons. Victor sees systems. He watches Steve interact with technology that should not exist yet. He hears fragments of future terminology. Even silence teaches him something. That time can be breached. That destiny can be redirected. And that those who control time write history. This realization does not create doom instantly. It creates obsession. An obsession that waits patiently, growing stronger as the years move forward. And Steve never even notices the spark he ignited. That matters later. Greatly. I want to pause here because this is the most important misunderstanding fans have about time travel. Steve did not need to speak to Victor. He did not need to shake his hand or change a file. His mere existence was enough. The Super Soldier Serum rewrote Steve's biology. That biology emits energy signatures science could barely comprehend in 1970. Pair that with residual Tesseract exposure from multiple timelines, and Steve becomes a walking paradox. I think Victor, watching from the margins, senses this immediately. Not emotionally, but intellectually. He sees readings spike. Equations fail. Patterns collapse. And instead of fear, he feels clarity. If time can be broken accidentally, it can be broken intentionally. This is not villain thinking yet. This is revolutionary thinking. Victor is not angry at Steve personally. He is angry at the imbalance Steve represents. A man from the future empowered by American science, returning to the past, then leaving without consequence. That is the lie Victor refuses to accept. Every experiment leaves residue. Every anomaly leaves scars. Victor begins theorizing control, not heroism. Governance, not symbols. While Steve steals a moment with Peggy, Victor steals an idea that will define his life. Power must answer to intellect. Time must answer to will. This is the quiet birth of something dangerous, happening in a room in-game never shows us. And once an idea like that exists, it never disappears. It waits for circumstances to justify its execution. Those circumstances are still coming. Very soon indeed. From this point forward, Victor's path quietly diverges from everyone else's. While America celebrates symbols, Victor studies systems. While heroes chase villains, Victor analyzes structures that allow villains to rise. I believe witnessing Steve in 1970 teaches him a brutal truth. Morality is flexible when power is involved. Steve does not ask permission from the timeline. He takes what he needs. He leaves. The world adapts. Victor absorbs that lesson deeply. Europe, already fractured and recovering, watches America become the center of miracles. Funding flows west. Recognition follows heroes, not thinkers. Victor does not want revenge. He wants correction. A world where intellect governs power, not charisma. He starts blending theories that should never meet. Physics with philosophy. Science with the idea of absolute order. This is still not magic. Not yet. This is preparation. Doom is not born from trauma alone. He is born from observation. Steve Roggers becomes the proof that individuals can bend history and face no judgment. Victor decides history itself needs a ruler. Someone who will never allow accidents to shape the world again. Someone who will decide outcomes before chaos does. This mindset is invisible to the Avengers. It grows in academic halls, private labs, and ignored nations. By the time the world meets Victor again, his conclusions will already be unshakable. And it all traces back to a man who believed he was just borrowing time. That belief will soon collapse under its own weight, when time demands repayment, with devastating interest, eventually. What makes this story tragic is that Steve never sees any of this. To him, 1970 is a personal detour, a chance to fix a mistake and steal a glance at the life he lost. I don't blame him. That humanity is why we love him. But history doesn't care about intentions. It only records impact. While Steve focuses on Peggy, the timeline focuses on Victor. That imbalance is everything. The Avengers treat time like a tool. Victor treats it like a responsibility. That philosophical split is the fault line running through this entire theory. One side believes in freedom at any cost. The other believes in order at any cost. Neither sees themselves as villains. That is what makes their eventual collision inevitable. And this is only the first fracture. The seed planted in 1970 does not bloom immediately. It waits. It watches the world Steve helps create. And that world will give Victor even more reasons to believe history needs a master. Because the second time travel decision Steve makes is far more destructive than the first. If 1970 gave Victor knowledge, the choice Steve makes later will give Victor motive. Doom is not born screaming. He is born thinking, quietly, patiently, and always watching the symbol who showed him that time can be bent without consequence. That lesson will haunt the future, in ways no Avenger expects, or can stop, at all. I think the biggest trick Endgame plays on us is convincing us the story is over when the credits roll. It gives Steve a dance, a smile, and silence. That silence hides consequences. In storytelling, silence is never empty. It is loaded. The camera leaves Steve satisfied, but time does not. Time keeps accounting. Somewhere in Europe, Victor continues growing, learning, and watching the world tilt toward one nation. One symbol, one narrative. Every news headline about Captain America is a reminder of the imbalance that began decades earlier. The irony is painful. Steve becomes a living myth because he breaks the rules and gets away with it. Victor becomes obsessed because he understands rules exist for a reason. And the MCU quietly lets both paths run parallel without comment. That is why this theory fits so cleanly. It does not rewrite the past. It exposes it. The Avengers think they saved everything. In reality, they created a future that demands a ruler, not a hero. And that ruler is already sharpening his mind long before he sharpens any armor. This is still the calm before the storm. The real damage hasn't happened yet, but the foundation is set. The paradox is alive. And Captain America, unknowingly, has already chosen a side. Not through words or violence, but through presence alone. Presence that will echo across generations and borders. That echo is growing louder, even now. And we are about to hear it, whether we want to or not, soon. Before we move forward, it's important to sit with what this first event truly means. A single detour creates a chain reaction that no one monitors. Steve returns the Tesseract eventually, but exposure cannot be undone. Ideas cannot be unseen. Victor's worldview is now anchored to a moment of proof. Proof that heroes rewrite rules and call it destiny. From this point on, every global shift reinforces his conclusion. Every American victory feels preordained. Every European loss feels engineered. Doom is still theoretical here, still human, still capable of choosing another path. But the options are narrowing. History, once bent, rarely straightens itself. And Steve, unknowingly, becomes a constant reference point in Victor's mind. The man who broke time and walked away smiling. The symbol that justifies control. This is why Dr. Doom is so dangerous compared to other villains. He does not want chaos. He wants correction, order, balance through dominance. And that desire does not come from madness. It comes from logic shaped by a single, unguarded moment in 1970. The MCU never calls attention to this. But it doesn't need to. The groundwork is already there, waiting for the final push that turns philosophy into action. And that push is not cosmic, alien, or accidental. It comes from a choice rooted in love, not strategy. A choice that feels right but breaks everything else. Up to this point, we've only talked about influence and exposure, about seeds planted quietly in the past. What we haven't talked about yet is consequence. What happens when Steve doesn't just visit the past but chooses to live inside it? That decision is not a footnote. It is an earthquake. It reshapes governments, power structures, and global priorities. It turns Victor's theories into lived reality. And it gives Dr. Doom something far more dangerous than knowledge. It gives him justification. Everything we've discussed so far is only the setup. The storm hasn't hit yet. But you can already feel the pressure changing. Because sometimes the greatest villains aren't created by hatred or loss. They're created by heroes who never realize the cost of their happiness. And when that cost is measured across nations, the damage becomes irreversible. This is not about blame. It is about consequence. And consequence is the one thing time always collects. Dr. Doom is already counting the debt. And Steve has no idea the bill exists. It will arrive sooner than anyone expects. And it will demand payment. In full. When Steve decides to stay in the past with Peggy, the movie frames it as a reward, but I see it as a fracture point. This is no longer a quick visit that time can absorb and heal. This is permanent occupation. Steve becomes a living paradox embedded inside history for decades. Every breath he takes rewrites probability. Even if he hides, even if he never picks up the shield again, his mind alone is a weapon. He knows outcomes, wars, technologies, betrayals, and turning points that have not happened yet. People around him do not need to hear details for history to bend. Small nudges matter. Casual advice matters. Silence matters. Peggy Carter is not just the woman he loves. She is a founder of S.H.I.E.L.D., a strategic architect, and a future power broker. Steve living beside her means decisions are shaped before they are formalized. Threats are anticipated early. America does not just respond anymore. It predicts. From Steve's perspective, this feels like peace. From the timeline's perspective, it is manipulation. The world begins reorganizing itself around a future only one man remembers. History stops being organic and starts being curated. Steve thinks he chose happiness. In reality, he chose authorship over time itself. Fate bends quietly, unnoticed but permanently altered for everyone. This altered world is subtle, which makes it dangerous. Hydra still falls, but not cleanly. Some threats vanish before they surface. Others are redirected instead of destroyed. The Cold War shifts tone. American intelligence becomes frighteningly efficient. To Steve, these are victories. Fewer casualties. Fewer disasters. But globally, something else is happening. Power centralizes. Innovation follows funding, and funding follows influence. Europe, already fragile, begins to lag behind. Research programs lose backing. International collaborations dissolve. Smaller nations are told to wait. Latvia is one of them. A country rich in intellect but poor in leverage. Slowly cut off from meaningful participation. Victor Von Doom grows up watching this imbalance solidify. He recognizes patterns others ignore. America is not lucky. It is prepared. And that preparation traces back to unseen guidance. Steve never gives orders, but his presence, changes outcomes. Peggy listens. Officials listen to Peggy. Doors close quietly elsewhere. Victor watches his homeland suffocate, not by invasion, but by irrelevance. This is worse. This is systemic erasure. He remembers the anomaly from 1970 and connects it to the present. The same man, the same symbol, always central. Doom's belief hardens. Heroes do not save the world. They reshape it to favor themselves, then call it justice. He refuses to accept that future ever again. This is where Victor's path takes its most important turn. Science alone no longer feels sufficient. He has seen equations fail to explain Steve Roggers. He has watched probability bend without visible force. So Victor looks elsewhere, not out of superstition, but logic. He studies ancient texts alongside advanced physics. He searches for systems older than governments and stronger than borders. Magic in the MCU is not fantasy. It is another discipline of understanding reality. One America ignores because it cannot be standardized or monetized. Victor does not dismiss it. He integrates it. His mother's work, his country's folklore, forbidden knowledge dismissed by modern institutions all become data. Science teaches him how the world works. Mysticism teaches him why. He sees something the Avengers never do. Power does not come from stones or serum alone. It comes from synthesis, from controlling multiple systems at once. Steve represents physical perfection and moral symbolism. Doom will represent intellectual supremacy and absolute order. He is not chasing revenge. He is chasing prevention. A future where no single man can accidentally reshape the world without accountability. Ironically, this makes him more dangerous than Thanos. Thanos wanted balance through destruction. Doom wants stability through control. And control, once tasted, is never surrendered willingly. Now both time travel events finally converge. The exposure in 1970 gave Victor knowledge. Steve staying in the past gives him motive. Together, they form Inevitability. Victor does not hate Steve personally. He studies him like a case study, a proof of concept. One man allowed to exist outside rules creates decades of imbalance without lifting a finger. Doom decides the problem is not Steve's morality. It is the system that allows symbols to override structure. The Avengers protect freedom, but freedom without oversight creates gods. Doom will not allow gods. He will replace them with governance. His armor is not just protection. It is authority. His mask is not fear. It is anonymity. No more heroes. No more legends. Only order. This is why Doom will clash with the Fantastic Four differently than any villain before him. He is not reacting. He is correcting. And every step of his philosophy traces back to Steve's choices. The dance with Peggy is not a happy ending. It is the moment the timeline loses neutrality. Steve becomes proof that time can be colonized. Doom becomes the response that ensures it never happens again. This is the MCU's darkest irony. The greatest hero creates the greatest tyrant by choosing personal peace over universal balance. This reframes Endgame completely. Thanos was a threat from outside. Doom is a consequence from within. Thanos invaded the universe. Steve quietly reshaped it. That is why Doom will not see himself as a villain. He will see himself as the only adult in a room full of children playing with time bombs. And he will be right, at least from his perspective. Every disaster, every invasion, every multiversal crack will reinforce his belief. Heroes react. Doom plans. Heroes protect moments. Doom protects centuries. And when he finally steps onto the global stage, the world will not reject him immediately. Some nations will listen. Some will surrender willingly. Because Doom offers something the Avengers never do. Permanence. No snap. No reset. No borrowed time. Just order enforced by intellect. That is terrifying. And it all exists because Steve Roggers made two human decisions without thinking like a god. The MCU does not need to retcon anything to make this work. It only needs to reveal what was always there. Consequence. Time always collects its debt. Doom is that collection made flesh. The final, uncomfortable truth is this. If Steve never went to 1970, Victor never sees time as controllable. If Steve never stays with Peggy, the world never tilts so violently toward one power. Remove either event, and Victor is just a genius. Add both, and Dr. Doom becomes inevitable. Thanos wiped out half the universe. Steve Roggers created the conditions for a ruler who wants to own all of it. Not through genocide, but governance. Not through chaos, but order. That is why Doom will be harder to defeat. You cannot punch philosophy. You cannot shame logic. And you cannot undo decades of imbalance without admitting the heroes were wrong. That admission is something the MCU has never fully made. Yet, and when Doom finally confronts the legacy of Captain America, it will not be with hatred. It will be with disappointment. Because in Doom's eyes, Steve had the chance to be better than a symbol. He chose comfort instead. And the world paid the price. If this theory changes how you see Endgame, hit like, share this with someone who loves MCU deep dives, and subscribe for more stories hidden between the scenes.